Hello, it's Younghee. Today I want to discuss food and unhealthy attitudes toward eating and food in relation to Korean adoptees. Most adoptees, particularly in the early years of the 1950s to the 1970s, grew up in poverty. It was common for children living on the street to eat insects, food scraps, and wild plants. Some children lived in orphanages, which, if you were lucky, provided a little rice. Both circumstances involve competition for very limited resources, which were taken more easily by the older, bigger children. As a result, many such Korean children developed unhealthy attitudes toward and habits about food. Probably one of the most common eating disorders is food hoarding. I've commonly heard about children, once moved into their new adoptive home, hiding food and saving it for later. This was a result of not having enough to eat and not knowing when or if there might be another meal. Some adoptees would stow food away under their beds or otherwise out of sight. As newcomers in our second homes, we did not know what to anticipate regarding our safety and getting our needs met. My situation led to binge eating. This means when food is available, you eat as much as you can in hopes it will keep you full until the next meal. This is just one form of hoarding. From my earliest days in the United States, my adoptive grandmother would tell me that my eyes were bigger than my stomach. As far back as I can remember, I was always a big eater. Rarely did someone have to tell me to clean off my plate. It probably had something to do with the fact that I was malnourished and small for a 3-year-old when I arrived from Korea. I grew up in a home with a father that was often away on travel and a mother that didn't cook. So together, my mother and I maintained unhealthy eating habits. She had a bit of a sweet tooth, so it was common to find cookies or pastries around our house. Meals were almost always frozen entrees and rarely involved fresh fruits or vegetables. I jokingly say that I didn't try my first vegetable until I was 30 years old. I also didn't develop a habit for proteins and grains, but instead filled up on unhealthy carbohydrates. On the outside, this seemed fine because I was slim with a fast metabolism until about 7th grade. In the middle of my 7th grade year, my adoptive parents, who had divorced about 3 years earlier, life took a drastic change. My adoptive mother and I had been sharing a life full of yelling, fighting, and slamming doors. There were many unprocessed feelings that lingered after my parents separated. I was hurt, angry, neglected, and abused. My father had pretty much abandoned me when he moved out. My mother coped by hitting me or not being home, so I grew up on my own. Little, if anything, was done to correct or discourage the bad habits I learned. At age 12, my mother kicked me out. I'm not sure I'd call it a blessing to have been taken in by my father and the woman with whom he was in a relationship. This woman was jealous and narcissistic, which made for a lethal combination. She did not want me in the family and made it known by taking away my belongings, humiliating me, and withholding food. In 8th grade, I did chores to earn money so I could walk to the grocery store and buy food. I didn't know how to cook, so my diet included apples, milk, bread, and bouillon soup cubes. A friend at school would sometimes bring me a sandwich. All this just precipitated my binge eating. Later in college, I added bulimia and compulsive exercise to my skill set. I spent a lifetime struggling with my weight and my self-esteem. It probably started with influence from my adoptive mother, who was depressed, anorexic, and bulimic. She regularly asked me if she looked fat and if I loved her. I was and still am affected by the onslaught of unhealthy beauty standards that exist in mass media. I'm not good enough, pretty enough, smart enough, or interesting enough. I didn't value myself enough to change my thinking or to give myself grace. I still struggle with these issues today. If only I was a little skinnier, a little prettier, a little more. Thank you for listening.